Congress gearing up to jam another debt deal down our gullets, and they're trying to sell it like this is a good thing for America, like we're all better off because these bureaucrats continue to spend money that the country doesn't have. But as Congress gets together to pass this thing at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, we're going to look at updates and we're going to see why some very familiar faces have decided to flip and support what feels like to us endless spending with very limited conditions on where that money goes. Updated 15 minutes ago, House votes to consider spending the federal debt limit. That's going to be happening tonight. You see McCarthy and the crew waltzing into the House. The House voted on Wednesday to take up, coming out of the Rules Committee, that would suspend the nation's debt and limit spending, clearing a major procedural hurdle. Republicans are in revolt over the measure. It fell to Democrats to help clear the way for legislation in a 241 to 187 vote that reflected a bitter split over the compromise. The vote to begin debate is normally a formality that passes entirely along party lines. Mr. McCarthy's inability to keep his members united was a political setback. So it led to a suspenseful scene on the House floor. Republican defections stacked up. Democrats waited to begin casting votes. In the end, 29 Republicans opposed the measure. 52 Democrats crossed party lines to support it. Now that's just to open debate. To muster a 218 vote majority to push the actual bill through the closely divided House, McCarthy will need to cobble together a coalition of Republicans willing to back it and enough Democrats to make up for what was shaping to be a substantial number of GOP defections. Mr. McCarthy and his lieutenants predicted they would be able to do so, and they scheduled a final vote for Wednesday night. That's tonight. Everybody has a right to their own opinion, he said, but on history, I'd want to be here with this bill today. We'll go through it. Now, the vote came after a contentious debate on the House floor. Both Democrats and Republicans are frustrated with this. In that compromise, they say nobody got what they wanted. We certainly didn't get everything we wanted. I'm pretty sure the Democrats got a lot more than the Republicans got, but we'll get there. Republican chairman of the Rules Committee later said, we'll continue to try to work together, but the preeminent problem we have with our friends on the other side think we can spend forever. Right, and the Republicans just kind of let them. Their biggest accomplishment will be ending a crisis, and they're all pointing fingers at each other. But we have questions about certain congresspeople who tell us they're very conservative, but then suddenly they come out and they walk us through what a great deal this bill is. Here's a group of people we normally appreciate here on this show. People like Jim Jordan, Tom Massey, and Marjorie-Taylor Greene, all siding with this debt deal. And, you know, there's room for disagreements on all of these issues. And you can have congresspeople who do great work on other issues and do crap work on debt issues, and they are allowed to be criticized for those various issues and supported on the other issues where they're doing great work. This is a bad issue for these three. In my humble opinion, other Republicans think it's great, but they continue to spend. And based on what we read yesterday from Nancy Mace's interpretation on this, from Senator Mike Lee's interpretation on this, from many others, this is, including the Freedom Caucus in the House, which we followed a lot yesterday, Byron Donalds, Representative Dan Bishop, and others, they're telling us that their interpretation of this bill is that it is a big, meaningless nothing burger. And so it's very interesting to see these individuals come out and try to sell it to us.
About the meeting in there and what the general overall theme was, Congressman Green, you obviously said you weren't for sure a yes. Have you made up your mind yet?
Yeah, I came into town undecided, and after asking a lot of questions and talking with everyone, for me, there's a couple of very important things in this bill.
Like what?
Number one, it's the CR plan that thankfully Congressman Massey came up with.
Yeah.
And I've said from day one, this Congress, that the appropriations is where the fight is. And this plan allows us to pass 12 separate appropriation bills, and that's really important to me because I believe we have to fight. We have to fight to stop the weaponized government. We have to fight to reduce spending. We have to fight.
That's what your job was right now, was to fight to reduce spending. Like, that's the whole point of this whole deal that we're working on today. And as we learned yesterday, this deal kicks this can down the road until after 2024, after the election. It doesn't become another issue again until January. So this is the fight, okay? There is not going to be another opportunity for this in the Biden administration's term. So all this talk is crap. We're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to fight, and so on. Now, she's going to say, well, it's in the Appropriations Committee. That's where we do the hard work. And we read yesterday that there are waivers and exceptions written throughout this deal So that even Shalanda, who is from the Office of the Budget at the White House, Shalanda came out yesterday and confirmed that if any of these provisions interfere with the Biden administration's agenda, they're just going to waive them and do it anyways. So all of this stuff is just neat talk. They're going to move it from the top line to appropriations or whatever. But if they failed on this set of negotiations, should we believe that they have any fortitude in any of the future negotiations about appropriations? They're negotiating with the same Democrats who steamrolled them on this case.
And figure out a way to stop the 87,000 IRS agents.
That was supposed to happen now. By the time you figure it out, it's going to be done.
That are going to target conservatives. We have to figure out a way to use the Holman rule to get rid of people that are abusing their power and welding corruption and weaponized government against conservatives. So I believe in that plan, and we don't have a way to do it except in this bill right here. And so I'm really thankful to Congressman Massey for that. And for me, that's an anchor piece. Secondly, we cut $2.1 trillion in spending. That is absolutely amazing. Nowhere have we been able to do that this far, especially when we control this Congress with just a handful of seats, and this is one part. So I think it's really important to get behind it. It's going to be a fight. I think we need to get it passed, but I will say I'm not going to stand to the side and allow Chuck Schumer to send a clean debt ceiling bill back over here to the House with Lindsey Graham attaching Ukraine spending on it. That's something that is important to me as well.
So it's about Ukraine. All right. So look, to be fair, I think that all of these people are good Congress people and they're doing good work on other issues. This is a catastrophe of an issue, and they have dropped the ball on this pretty bad. You can see in Marjorie-Taylor Greene's face. I'm not sure she's really happy about this either, but they're good soldiers. They just go out there and they do what the home team wants to do. We're on Team Republican. Republicans got to get this done. Otherwise, there's going to be consequences for us or for the GOP or whatever. So they go out and they deliver the talking points just like you would if you were on a football team, right? Or just like you would if you were on any sports team. Yeah, you know, our coach made a crap play on that, or my quarterback did something stupid. We're not real happy with this play, or we're not happy with that decision to do this over here. Our company kind of boned that up, but we got to go out and fight for our company. We got to go out and stand up and, you know, cram this through. So they are good soldiers. They're doing what McCarthy wants, and the rest of us have to suffer the consequence. Now, I get irritated when they try to take a crap deal and try to tell us that it's an amazing deal when every morning we wake up and there's more spending. There's another, I think, 300 million going over to Ukraine today. We've got all sorts of problems in this country, and they are spending. And every time they spend more, it impacts all of our dollars. There isn't that money. They're making it up, which makes the value of our dollars less. Marjorie-Taylor Greene gave us some more background on this. She said, I agree with my conservative friends in the Freedom Caucus, who we talked about yesterday, on some of the flaws in this act. And I've never wanted to raise the debt ceiling on debt that I never voted to create. Here she is explaining this one. But I came to Washington to make changes. And this bill actually provides a tool that gives us a chance to make those fiscal changes, the one that came from Massey. The only power Republicans currently have is barely 1/2 of Congress. Okay. Which is only 1/3 of the federal government. Democrats control the rest. Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So if the country defaults, or if the Democrats don't cooperate, isn't it on them? I've been saying all along that the fight that I will fully engage in is appropriations, because appropriations is where everything is funded or defunded. And when your only real power is the ability to fund or defund, I'm all in to use that power as much as possible. In this debt ceiling bill, Marjorie says, there is a tool provided to us that requires the House to pass 12 separate appropriations bills from the 12 different appropriations subcommittees. And if we can't get them passed, then we automatically pass a funding continuing resolution with an automatic 1% cut. Okay. So is there times when Congress can't get stuff spent? So you're telling me that this only happens, we only get an automatic 1% cut if they can't spend money. So my guess is they're going to spend the money, right? That's obviously going to happen. Here's how it works. Marjorie says, in the past, the 12 appropriations bills would get put together in bill packages, anywhere from 3s to 6s, all the way to one big vote for all 12. That was done so leadership could force everyone to vote for all 12 funding appropriations, even if they didn't agree on several of the appropriation bills. It's all or nothing. Conservatives hated this because they couldn't vote no on bad bills and vote yes on the good ones. They could only vote yes or no to all of them. Add on top of this the pressure of a government shutdown if they didn't get appropriations done by the end of the year. We have all watched this dramatic saga on the news where Congress is in session on Christmas Eve being pressured to vote to fund the government. Yeah, on Christmas Eve or like Memorial Day, the one that we just had, to pass appropriations bill, or they couldn't be home to watch little Johnny open his presents on Christmas morning. And senior citizens wouldn't get their Social Security checks. So they held their nose and pressed the green button, and here we are. Marjorie says, by the way, dirty little tricks like these in the swamp are a big reason why we are nearing $32 trillion in debt and facing this ridiculous debt ceiling issue to begin with. Right, that you guys are agreeing to fund with another $4 trillion, maybe. But with the Massey CR tool in this bill, the only tool that, according to Marjorie by her own statement, only gets invoked if they can't spend, which I guarantee you they will. They're obviously going to spend. It's like, hey, you have to spend $10,000 or you lose a little bit of money. You're going to spend the $10,000 on anything. On top of that, this is the pressure of a government shutdown. She says, but with the Massey CR tool in this bill that will get signed into law, the 12 appropriation bills will be separate. So we get to look at them differently. It's not all or nothing. And if we don't get them passed because conservatives like me refuse to vote for garbage, yeah, right, then we don't have to deal with the pressure cooker campaign of a government shutdown because an automatic funding continuing resolution gets passed and the government gets funded 99% with a 1% spending cut for the American people. So I think she's saying that she can hold all of this up, and we'll see if she does that, right? So all of it would take would be separate appropriations bills. And if these people on the appropriations committee don't vote for the bills and they can't get them passed, then there is an automatic 1% cut that comes in, which would be great. I'd love to see the cut. My guess is, though, that never happens, that we never get this 1% cut. I would guess it never comes. That remains in place until we accomplish the hard work of passing 12 good separate appropriations bills, which they will. And that's where the real negotiation is going to take place. Just so all of us dummies out in the society can really understand what happened here. The actual negotiation that we've all been watching with close eyes over the last several weeks, or days really, with the Biden administration and McCarthy, that's not really consequential. What they write down into the bill, what they pass into law, all of those things, the hard written coded law in the statute is not really that important. What is important is the Appropriations Committee. That's where the real negotiation happens. For me, along with other strong conservatives like Jim Jordan, Warren Davidson, and Thomas Massie, and many others, we see this as an opportunity to make real changes when we are fighting with practically both hands tied behind our backs. And with the very reality of Chuck Schumer passing a clean debt ceiling raise in the Senate, with another Ukraine supplemental attached, passing the Fiscal Responsibility Act now gives us a new appropriations tool and cuts $2.1 trillion from the spending. We understand the urgency to pass this bill. If you're still having trouble understanding, just use your imagination and focus more on what we can defund in appropriations. Marjorie's telling us, man, I'm not that creative though. I can't imagine anything. Okay, so just use your imagination. What could it be? There's a lot of issues in this country. Could we defund the FBI? Could we defund the DOJ? Could we defund the EPA? Could we defund DHS? That's what my imagination goes to. Do you think anything of that is going to happen at all in any one of these committees? Of course not. So we should be living in fantasy land, and how we can all apply the Holman rule, which allows us not to fund federal programs and employees. And I have to inform you, these tools are being given to our entire conference by Speaker McCarthy. And I completely understand the skepticism, because I had it too, but things are different. Use your imagination. I ran for Congress because I felt like the Republican Party was broken. But in the past 5 months, our Republican conference that barely has 218 votes to do anything, this is the third time that she's complaining about the size of the Republican Party. Passed the strongest border security bill in history, America First Energy Bill, Parents' Bill of Rights, Protecting Speech and Women, Girls in Sports Acts, and many other truly conservative bills. That's great that you passed them. Are they going anywhere in the Senate? No. Why? Because you don't control the Senate. What do you control? The House. What does the House have? The power of the purse. When do you use the power of the purse? In negotiations over the debt, where we're talking about financial collapse of the country. So this is all just red herrings. I mean, it really is neat that they got all this crap passed. But has any of it been signed into law? No, none of it. So when they can get stuff that is totally meaningless done, and the Democrats don't care because they know it's not going anywhere. But when it's time to play about a topic that matters, which is about the debt and about the debt ceiling, where the Republicans actually can do something where they can't on any of these other things, protecting women's and girls in sports, protecting speech, all that crap. It goes to the Senate and dies. This is where they could have drawn a line in the sand. This is where all the conservative bona fides could have come out. This is where we could have stopped spending like lunatics after the COVID era and return to some sense of normalcy. But they're not doing any of that. Instead, Marjorie's truly excited at the thought of what we can accomplish if Americans give us full control with the White House, House, and the Senate. Yeah, we'll give you more control. Sure, we're all enthusiastic about what you've done to us. I know what every hardworking American knows. Rome was not built in a day and problems don't get solved overnight. It takes tenacious hard work and commitment to never give up. Commitment is an important word, and never giving up is another important concept. When you go into Congress and you talk about things like fiscal responsibility and getting America's house back in order, many Republicans, in my opinion, have given up. This is a game of inches, and I intend for all of us to win, says Marjorie. That is 19 of 19. And so that is where she stands. Thomas Massey's on that same team, as is Steve Scalise. And so here is how the Republicans came out and tried to sell this one to us.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate your work. Look, there has been a lot of hard work and a lot of late nights that have gone into changing the spending trajectory in this town that has brought us to this point where we've got over $31 trillion in debt.
It's going to be 34.
Tonight is no different. You see how late it is?
Or 35.
The work's not going to stop for a long time. There's a lot of work that needs to continue to go into fixing all of the problems that President Biden has created.
Yeah, use your imagination.
You see inflation through the roof. You see the struggles that hardworking families are experiencing because Washington went on a multi-trillion-dollar spending binge over the last 2 years.
Right.
And Joe Biden didn't want that spending binge to end. But the American people had a different idea when they elected a House Republican majority committed to finally getting spending under control in Washington.
We did have a different idea.
And that's what this bill is about.
Yeah, we did have a different idea.
You know, something you haven't seen in a long time in this town.
What is it?
Is that when a major bill comes to the floor, we actually give our members time to read the bill before you vote on it.
This is another dumb talking point they've all been using. McCarthy came out with this one too. We'll hear it in a minute. It's very, very tired. They say, well, we at least read the bills. And it's like, okay, that's great. You took 3 days to read a crap bill. To be honest, I don't care if you have a crap bill that you pass and don't read it, or if you have a crap bill and you read it and pass it. It's still a crap bill. The point of having the 3-day window was so that the American people could also read it and speak out and put pressure on you people to stop doing stuff that we don't want you to do. They come out and they tell us that they got elected because Americans want a new era. They want a whole new different approach to all of this stuff. And they do the exact same stuff.
We have a 72-hour minimum that we allow every member to read the bill. And the more that people read in this bill, the more they find in terms of real conservative victories that are going to help us get spending under control and get our economy back on track. And you have to do both. You will never get to a balanced budget unless you do two major things. One is control Washington's spending obsession, but also you've got to help get people back to work. You've got to help get the economy moving again. And there are a number of pieces in this bill that never would have existed if Nancy Pelosi was still Speaker of the House. Everybody knows that if we were at this point today and Republicans were in the minority in the House, all that you would be wondering about is how much more spending was Washington going to do over current year.
We don't even know what the upper limit is. My understanding is there is no upper cap. They can spend whatever they want. Nancy Pelosi might have put a number on it, for crying out loud.
How many more taxes are hardworking families going to have to pay?
A lot. Because of this. If there is no money coming into the government and you keep spending, you're going to have to close that gap. There is going to be a massive increase of taxes in this country. If they get their way, it's the only way to close the gap. They're going to bring out student loans is coming back on, and that's going to take out major chunks of cash from the country. Commercial real estate's on the brink. We see a whole world where things are on the brink of a recession. So the tax revenues are going to go down, and they're not going to be able to pay for this additional spending. They sell it to us as a cut, but there is an increase.
Guess what? Joe Biden wanted more taxes in this package, and Speaker McCarthy insisted not a dime in new taxes would be in this bill or any other bill that comes out of this House majority. And that's made crystal clear in this legislation. We restart the student loan paybacks. That's a $60 billion windfall for all of those families who actually do pay their bills. For those families.
How is that a windfall for them?
that didn't go to college, or especially.
Are they getting money back when other people pay their student loans? Are they getting money back for that? And I talked about this yesterday, and I said that this is an unforced error from the Republicans. This was a Democrat issue that they were going to have to deal with at some point. They already said that they were going to bring back the student loans in. Now the Republicans are accelerating that, taking full ownership of this issue for some stupid reason. And it's going to be used, already is being utilized by the left to say the Republicans are starting your loans up again. So when they get the letters, they're going to go to Miguel Cardona and he's going to say the Republicans accelerated this. I can't believe they've done this. And they're taking this and telling their base that this is a victory for their base, which is true, right? People should pay their bills. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying the Democrats had this issue. They had to own it. They kept continuing it and postponing it and postponing it. And now the Republicans, like idiots, took that issue away from them and said, we'll be the bad guys now. It is so dumb. And then they come out and they tell us this is a giant victory. Why? Because they're going to be paying their loans again? But you guys are spending even more. Joe Biden sending another $300 million over to Ukraine. So yes, we want a return to normalcy, but we want it done responsibly. And it's just a political blunder for the Republicans to take this issue, which was a Democrat faceplant, away from them.
For those families who went to college and took out student loans and paid them back.
Right.
And think it's fair.
Is that a windfall, though?
That everyone else has to do the same thing they did. And it wouldn't be fair if some hardworking single mom working 2 jobs right now has to pay so that somebody who took out a student loan and is sitting at his parents' house right now, making $35,000 a year, not working.
The hell are you talking about?
She has to pay his loan back.
What are you talking about? That's not how that works.
That wouldn't be fair. And you know what else we do? We put work requirements in place, something we haven't seen in a long time. Something, by the way, that was an originated idea back when Joe Biden was a senator and he voted for it when Bill Clinton was president, working with a Republican majority. Something that helped get people out of poverty and back into the workforce. Paying into programs like Social Security that are going bankrupt under Joe Biden's spending binge, but because people will be working again. That is going to help us shore up Social Security. So this bill does all of those things.
I don't know what he's talking about. Some woman who's working 2 jobs is paying her loan. Some other dude is hanging out for $35,000 a year working at his mom's house, or not working at his mom's house. And this is going to right that wrong. And if we right that wrong, then he's going to get back to work. And then that's going to fix Social Security on top of it.
And more. Real spending cuts, real reforms, permitting reforms that allow us to build roads and bridges again.
Wow, permits.
Why should it take 10 years to build a road project where sometimes if
It shouldn't.
Group
that this is a spending bill.
It just wants to kill a project. You can go through all the environmental reviews, and there might be 5 different agencies that are looking at your permit. And as soon as they file lawsuits in block 1 area, you succeed a year and a half later and they go file another lawsuit and it's another year and a half. And finally, eventually people just give up and they stop building things in America. Well, we create a one-stop shop in this bill so that you still have to follow all the rules, but it's not gamed. You can't go from agency to agency to try to stop a project. You only go to one place, and there's shot clocks on the federal agencies. Anybody who's ever tried to build something in America, if a federal agency asks you for information, they don't just say whenever you get around to doing it, send us the information. They give you a shot clock. And if you don't meet that deadline, you're going to get fined, or you're surely not going to get your permit.
It sounds like he's just talking to try to beat the shot clock from expiring on this press conference. He's just rambling off. Social Security. We got to get that fixed. And if we don't fix Social Security, then there's going to be people on student loans who just hanging out in their mom's basement. And by the way, have you seen what it takes to build a basement lately? I mean, if a federal agency kind of came into your basement and they said, put a beam in here, you'd have to go and get 5 permits in 30 different agencies. And it's totally ridiculous, which is why this bill is so important. And we need to pass it immediately to save America.
And yet you give them that information and you might wait 6 months or a year longer to hear back from the federal agency. Shouldn't the federal agency have the same shot clock that you, the taxpayer, have? We put that in this bill too. So again, there are a lot of really important reforms that are in this package, something that I think everybody has been waiting a long time to see from Washington.
No,
Not how much more is Washington going to spend, but for once in a long, long time, Washington is actually going to spend less money next year than it is this year. And that's a reform that all of us can support.
Does anybody believe that for a second? Next year, they're going to spend less?
All right, with that, why don't we take...
Next year, Washington's going to spend less. I think I caught a facial reaction. Let's take a look at these reactions. Let's take a look at her reaction here. When he says Washington's going to spend less, let's
Washington. Not how much more is Washington going to spend, but for once in a long, long time, Washington is actually going to spend less money next year than it is this year. And that's a reform.
I'm not sure. I think it was right there. She says, yeah, right there. Eyes get a little bit big right there.
Than it is this year. And that's a reform.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I see a little doubt in that face. I could be wrong on that. Anyways, I don't think they believe it for a second. They are not cutting any spending in Washington. It's Washington. They spend all the time. And next year, there's going to be all sorts of emergency, this and this and this, and Ukraine's going to need more money. How many more billions are they going to give over to them too? And we'll, of course, wait and see. Kev was out explaining this as well. Here's what he had to say.
It's a different Congress. It's a new day. It's not that you have to pass the bill to find out what's in it.
Here we go.
You got 72 hours. This isn't a 1,000-page bill.
It's a short bill. You can read it.
This is 99 pages. And this is different than we've ever had before. We're actually going to spend less money this year than we spent last year. And your viewers have heard me give this analogy before. A debt limit is like the family having a credit card, but you've been charging it up every year and just keep lifting the limit.
Yeah.
This year's different. We now say we're going to spend less. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to look at all what we spend our money on because the mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicare, that's all off to the side. So I can only look at about 15% of what we spend our money on.
Okay.
So what we did is, in elements like non-defense, that's going to go below 2022 levels. So that's a very positive. But the other thing we did, we put ourselves on a spending plan. We cap how much we can spend for the next 6 years with government. But we also did something different.
What else?
In this family, we may have a child that able-bodied, not married, no kids, but he's sitting on the couch collecting welfare. We're going to put work requirements on that individual. So he's going to have work requirements. He's going to get a job, and it's going to make the life easier. But we're also going to look at places we've been spending our money that we've wasted that we're going to return, right? Like all that COVID money that we didn't spend, we're going to bring it back. But one of my favorites here is $400 million for CDC, the Global Fund, where we'd use that hardworking taxpayer money over to China. We're not going to do that. We're going to send that back. And then we did a number of other things here, right? One of the things that's very interesting we did, that the president has been spending money wildly. If he wants to put a new regulation in, we took an executive order of President Trump's, and now we're putting it into law and making it a little tougher, where if he wants to put a new regulation in, he has to cut government if it costs more than $100 million. And then we looked at things about cutting the red tape, that we get so frustrated that we can't build the roads. It takes 7 years. We now reform NEPA, the environmental review. Instead of waiting 7 years, now the studies are only 1 to 2 years. This hasn't been done in 40 years. And then we did something interesting to make government or make Congress consequences for their lack of action. They have 12 appropriation bills that they have to pass every year, and they never do, and they come back with that omnibus. Now we say, if you don't do your job, it's a 1% cut across the board. Okay. So encourage members of Congress, not now with the new Congress, you actually show up, now you're going to have to work. This is going to be the biggest cut by the Congressional Budget Office says in history of where we're going forward. To do all that, we allowed the debt ceiling to go forward for the next 18 months, and we'll readdress it, hopefully with a Republican president and a Republican Senate to even make it stronger.
All right, nice little talking speech from McCarthy there. Sounds amazing, right? Sounds really good. It's like, wow, that is a really great deal. We do have an amazingly effective conservative House Speaker who is leading us into fiscal sanity, right? Well, here's what Senator Ron Paul has to say about this bill.
The House reached a deal with the White House on the debt limit. Unfortunately, fake conservatives agreed to fake spending cuts, and conservatives were sold out once again. The Biden-McCarthy debt deal will add over $4 trillion in new debt over the next 2 years. The Biden-McCarthy deal never balances the budget, and it cements the COVID spending binge that drove inflation.
So it's strange that in our same government, we can be looking at the same bill and have two entirely different interpretations of this. McCarthy comes out, no, we're rolling it all back. No, it's not going to be this. It's not going to be any of this. You go over to the Senate, Rand Paul says, that's all not true. This is all fake. Same bill, same country, I think still. And we get two entirely different interpretations. I think I know which one I believe.
The Biden-McCarthy deal will push our national debt to nearly $35 trillion in just 2 years. The deal keeps 98% of the expansion and funding of the new IRS agents. and it doesn't cut a penny of Democrats' crony energy giveaways. I will absolutely not vote to expand our national debt by $4 trillion.
Insane.
When the bill reaches the Senate, I will offer a conservative alternative. My solution replaces the fake spending caps with real spending caps on total government spending. Spending caps are part of my 5-penny budget plan that balances the budget in just 5 years.
Woo!
My 5-penny plan creates a mandate that the federal government can't spend more than it brings in. Spending increases are forbidden from exceeding revenue forever.
That makes sense.
Our government's approach to budgeting is entirely irresponsible. No American is allowed to continue running up copious amounts of debt without consequences.
Of course not.
At some point,
we all have to live in reality.
The bills must be paid and spending must stop. If Congress had adopted my original penny plan in 2017, the federal budget would be balanced today. Unfortunately, they didn't have the courage. Thankfully, it's not too late to reverse course. It's time that legislators come together and pass my conservative solution. We can't fight a 5-alarm fire with a water pistol. For once, Congress must have some common sense and pass my conservative solution before it's too late.
We'd like to see it, Rand. Hopefully they do that. I think that Congress should be putting on the penny plan for the entire government. 5 pennies. That's all you get, FBI. Here you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't spend them all in one place, Christopher Wray. Think that would be appropriate. Now we'll see what happens. When this bill lands over in the Senate, though, even though Rand Paul might be opposing it, Chuck Schumer is going to be giddy and thrilled and cram it on through.
So, Mr. President, 3 days ago, President Biden and Speaker McCarthy announced a bipartisan budget agreement that will protect the U.S. economy while eliminating the threat of a catastrophic default. I support the bipartisan agreement that President Biden has produced with Speaker McCarthy. Avoiding default is an absolute imperative. The damage that default would inflict on our country, our economy, our families would be enormous and take years from which to recover. Of course, nobody is getting everything they want. There's give on both sides. But this agreement is the responsible, prudent, and very necessary way forward. Today, the House of Representatives is beginning the process of moving that legislation through the chamber. When this bill arrives in the Senate, it is my plan to bring it to the floor as quickly as possible for consideration.
Gross.
Senators must be prepared to act with urgency to send a final product to the president's desk for the June 5th deadline.
June 5th deadline coming up, and Chuck Schumer is going to cram it on through. So the Republicans will cram it through the House. They'll give it to the Democrats. The Democrats will cram it through the Senate, and then they'll give it over to sleepy Joe Biden, and he will cram it down the gullets of America, making the money printer go brr. And of course, we don't want the country to default. We don't want America to collapse, but that's the point. We don't want the country to default. We don't want America to collapse, and these psychopaths just keep spending like reality doesn't apply to them.